Um, in the first step that I want to start, I would like to give some minutes to depiction of Islamic Republic of Iran as rogue state. Such portrayals obscure the historical and political context within which the Iranian state has articulated its policies. When examined through a critical anti-colonial lens, these depictions appear less as objective assessment and more as a continuation of long-standing colonial epistemologies. Um, the portrayal of societies in the global south as irrational or immature is a well-established colonial practice. Through the 19th and early 20th century, imperial powers frequently represented colonized people as childlike, brutal, or incapable of self-governance. Political cartoons from the United States depicting Filipinos during the Philippine-American War, British colonial descriptions of Indians as passive and backward, or caricatures of Latin Americans in early 20th century American media all reflects this broader pattern. These representations were not merely cultural artifacts. They served political purposes. By depicting colonized populations as irrational or incapable of modern governance, imperial powers legitimized their own interventions as civilizing missions. Later on, Orientalist scholarship played a crucial role in institutionalizing these narratives. From the 19th century onward, many European scholars depicted Asian and Middle Eastern societies as inherently despotic, static, and resistant to progress without Western guidance. Iran was not exempt from such portrayals. One of the most influential examples is George Curzon. Of course, he was a geographer and academic, but also a colonial agent, and also for a time in the early 20th century, he was also a foreign minister of Britain. He has a very famous book, Persia and the Persian Questions, in 1892, which described Iran as a land where one king rules all, portraying its political system as inherently autocratic and its people as indolent and hostile to European influence. Such descriptions were profoundly ahistorical, ignoring the complex political institutions, intellectual traditions, and social movements that existed within Iranian society. These Orientalist depictions became particularly prominent whenever Iranian society mobilized against imperial influence. In the late 19th century, for instance, Iranian clerics, merchants, and intellectuals protested against major colonial concessions, such as Reuter concessions of 1872 and tobacco concession granted to Major Talbot in 1890. These protests, especially the movement of 1891 to 92 against the tobacco concession, represented some of the earliest large-scale anti-colonial mobilization in modern West Asia. Yet, rather than recognizing these movements as rational responses to economic exploitation and imperial domination, many Western observers dismissed them as irrational religious agitation led by reactionary clerics. This discursive pattern was not accidental. It was closely linked to the logic of imperial frontier making. In the 19th century, the expansion of the United States across North America generated a powerful ideological framework that justified territorial expansion by depicting frontier population as uncivilized and in need of control. This logic of frontier making gradually became embedded in broader imperial practices, also used in British ideology and language of imperial expansion, and also France. The idea that imperial powers had the right and even the obligation to intervene in supposedly backward regions informed policies ranging from direct colonial annexation to forms of economic and political control. In West Asia, the frontier making usually operated through economic concessions, political interventions, and epistemological domination. Iran experienced all three forms. Through the 19th and 20th century, Imperial powers sought influence through economic concessions, oil agreements, and political manipulation. At the same time, Western narratives about Iranian society reinforced the idea that external intervention was necessary. Viewed within this longer historical trajectory, contemporary depictions of Islamic Republic as rogue state appear less as neutral description and more as updated versions of an imperial discourse. The persistence of this narrative is partly explained by modern media dynamics, visual contrasts between images of pre-revolutionary Iran, often emphasizing the westernized lifestyle of elite under the Shah, and post-revolutionary images of a society that openly integrates religion into politics and policies of everyday life have been widely used to reinforce the idea that Iran has regressed into irrationality and religious sectarianism. Such imaginaries circulated through global media networks have proven effective in shaping public perception, even though it often obscured the political and historical realities that ignited the revolution. Now, to your other questions that were embedded in this, regarding the Iranian nuclear program and this being a base for calling Iran a rogue state. In Western analysis, Iran is often treated as a country pursuing nuclear technology for its ideological extremism, tendency to violence, or irrational defiance. Yet, historically, Iran's nuclear program did not originate after the Islamic Republic. It began during the reign of the last Shah Pahlavi as part of a modernization project that actually enjoyed some Western support. But after the 1970 revolution, this continuation of this nuclear program was received badly. The leadership of the Islamic Republic of Iran has articulated religious objection to nuclear weapons, most notably through a fatwa declaring the production and use of such weapons incompatible with Islamic ethical principles. But we don't hear about these data in Western media. And regardless of how one evaluates this statesmen politically and their intentions, their embedded meanings, they demonstrate that the issue cannot be reduced to a fanatic urge to build bombs and blow up other people, which we hear every day in Trump's rhetoric and White House tweets. More importantly, the strategic rationale behind the Islamic Republic of Iran's policies becomes clearer when viewed in the context of Iran's modern history of anti-colonial resistance. So now getting to your last question, since the 19th century, Iranian political movements have repeatedly mobilized against imperial domination. The struggle against economic concession, as I just mentioned, in the 19th century, then the constitutional movement, early 20th century, resistance to 1919 Anglo-Persian agreement, which was basically would turn Iran into a client state of England, Britain at the time, and later campaigns surrounding oil sovereignty all reflected a broader demand for national independence. The nationalization of Iran's oil industry under Prime Minister Mossadegh in 1951 was perhaps the most prominent expression of this aspiration. This subsequent CIA and MI6-backed coup of 1953, which overthrew Mossadegh and restored the Shah's authority, profoundly shaped Iranian political consciousness. Following the coup, the Shah regime consolidated power through extensive repression while aligning closely with Western strategic interests. The 1954 Oil Consortium restored the control over Iranian petroleum resources by British and American oil companies. So And then the domestic opposition, whether from religious mobilization, patriotic forces, or socialist movement, was systematically suppressed. Iranian forces during the Shah's reign were even deployed to support Western allied regional interventions, such as assisting Sultan of Oman against the Zofar in the movement in that country. For many Iranian revolutionaries, these historical experiences reinforced the observation that Iran's sovereignty was deeply constrained by imperial powers and this must change. Do you hear me? I think my internet connection is not
Yeah,
that
we can
stable.
hear you now. You
Sorry.
got cut off a little bit. Yeah, we can hear you now.
How
Thank
much
you.
time do I have?
You have 5 more minutes.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So maybe we can also talk a little bit about the after the revolution and experiences. Um, the central slogans of the Iranian Revolution in 1979 was sovereignty, freedom, and the establishment of a Islamic republic. This part. The second part, the republic, is mostly missed when we are hearing about what this state is about. The specific ideological form of the new political order was shaped by several factors. Iranian society was overwhelmingly Muslim, and religious networks have played a crucial role in mobilizing the revolution against the Shah and advancing their resistance. Clerical leaders, particularly Ayatollah Khomeini, had gained credibility through decades of opposition to imperial influence and authoritarian rule of Shah. By contrast, for the majority of Iranian population who were Muslim, secular political movements were often perceived as culturally dependent on Western models, Western ideas, and therefore may undermine the country's sovereignty once in power, even when their agendas were strongly anti-imperialist. The early years of the Islamic Republic further reinforced the leadership's emphasis on strategic autonomy. Only months after the revolution, Iraq invaded Iran in a war that would last 8 years, the longest war of the 20th century. The conflict was widely supported politically, financially, and militarily by several Western and regional powers that viewed the revolutionary state as a danger to the status quo. For Iranian revolutionaries now in power, the war became a difficult and illuminating experience. It demonstrated the vulnerability of the revolutionary state in front of imperial military complex as well as biased global governance. It thus highlighted the necessity of developing independent military capabilities, particularly forms of asymmetric defense that could compensate for conventional disadvantages. From this perspective, Iran's broader strategy of resistance, whether in sovereign military development, regional alliances, or technological self sufficiency, reflects a particular reading of history as well as the burden of hundreds of thousands of lives lost during and after the revolution for the revolution to survive. Moreover, Iraq war unveiled another reality that the imperial core feared if the Iranian revolution appeared successful in asserting sovereignty against external influence, it might inspire similar movements elsewhere in the global south. The rational conclusion by Iranian revolutionaries was that genuine political sovereignty would inevitably provoke pressure from dominant global powers, especially if it involved control over strategic resources such as oil and decisive geographies and trade routes. This expectation of external hostility contributed to a strategic doctrine emphasizing deterrence, asymmetric capabilities, and partnership with other actors resisting US regional dominance and the Zionist settler colonial expansion in West Asia. I just want to add at the end of my talk that, of course, there is a bold religious impact in the formation of this, but as it is outside my expertise, I would rather leave it maybe to another person later on explains how Shia Islam impacted the formation of this alliance and also the regional resistance front. Thank you so much.